keeping that connection, I think, is very, very difficult, and that is a challenge for a lot of families, that they spend so much time apart, because then every time you get back together, it's almost like you're starting over again.
Hello, and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show today. Glad to have you with us once again. Thank you for joining us. If you are listening to the podcast of this show, or you're listening over at Mojo 50, thank you for doing that. Great to have you guys with us. Take some time when you are done and go over to YouTube. Find this show and a lot of other content there. We'd love to share that with you as well. So take some time to do that. You can go to YouTube, search for Mighty Oaks or the Mighty Oaks Foundation. You'll find our channel there, and you can subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Go ahead and leave a comment if you'd like to share this content out. But again, I'm glad you're listening wherever it is you're listening from. But it's over at YouTube that we have tons of other content that I would like to invite you to take a look at. Please do that. And maybe you know someone that could use the help that is found there. Please take some time to jump over to that. Today, looking forward to our conversation. Last week, if you listened to the Mighty Oaks Show, you know we talked specifically about the military family and some of the unique challenges for the military family. I think a lot of folks who care about our military families don't necessarily understand some of the unique challenges of being in those families, and therefore we don't always know how to help them. And we want to talk about that again today. And my guests today may be familiar to you. Two lovely ladies with me today. Jeannette Kunath is here. Brandon, of course, is our National Programs Director. I say, of course, because he and I have done many interviews here. Jeanette's been on the show before as well. And Jeannette works with us here at the Mighty Oaks Foundation. And then my wife, Susanne, is here also. So I'll be very careful about what I say and how I say it, because both of them will yell at me if I do it wrong. So I want to talk today about the military family and some of the unique challenges that are encountered by our families who are serving with their spouse. And I know that often the spouse, maybe the husband, and then there's the kids, sometimes it's the wife and the kids. But you've both had the experience of being a part of a military family while the service member that you were married to was serving both here and going through the training processes and all that is involved there, and also in combat. So we want to talk about some of those things today, if you wouldn't mind. And since you're here, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
I don't mind.
Okay. Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right. So we'll jump into it. There are a lot of unique challenges, but before we get to that, for those that are listening or watching, maybe give us a brief history of each of your individual experiences with the military. When you got involved with, and I know both of your stories. Susanne and I have lived that together, so I know your stories. But share those. When you got involved with the military, how long you were a part of the active duty community, and maybe what you've been doing since then. Jeannette, do you want to start that for us?
Yeah, so Brandon and I met back in 2005. He had been in the military for a few years. He has since retired, but served 14 years in the military.
How many deployments did Brandon do while you guys were married?
I want to say it's 5, but
just
it really
lose
is.
track after a while.
You really do. Yeah. It becomes just part of the norm, I guess you can say, and it's just another thing to not look forward to, but to have to look forward to.
Yeah, right. It's just a part of the life.
Yeah.
How long were you married while Brandon was still in the Marine Corps?
Let's see, we were married for about 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years.
Okay. You've been married for how long now?
11 years.
You didn't expect all the math, did you?
No. What?
Yeah. So a lot of your time together as a married couple was during a period of time when Brandon was deployed and training and coming and going and doing all those things. Susanne, do you want to tell your military story a little bit?
Sure.
I know it. I'm very familiar with it. But
well, Jeremy and I met in 1995, and when we met, you were already kind of on your way to becoming an infantry officer. You were already part of the officer candidate, program, and you were getting ready to go on your first officer candidate school training or whatever. So that's when we met in 95. We got married in 1998, and then I would probably say for the first 5 years that we were married, you were gone pretty much all the time, I
Yeah,
think,
right.
either deployed or doing workups or doing a 3-week, training.
Right.
And so I would say probably pretty consistently we spent time apart during those first 5 years of our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's one of the unique challenges. We'll get to that here in a minute, talking about just the separation and even how to function as a couple and how to raise kids when there is that much separation. But looking back on your time, each of you, during that time, obviously there were some good things there as well. We talk about the hardships and the difficulties and the trials, but there are a lot of good things about the military family life as well. Jeannette, what are some of your, as you look back, some of your maybe favorite memories of your time while Brandon was serving?
While Brandon was serving deployed?
Or at home, not necessarily deployed.
I think when he got home from his deployments, those, just any time really, I would say, every time was so, I guess it was just grateful times. It was just so grateful to have him home and to spend that time together.
Yeah.
I felt like his deployments allowed us to just be closer and appreciate one another more.
Yeah.
And I can't really recall one specific moment, but it was after every deployment. I was just so grateful to have him home and for all of us to be together.
Yeah. Yeah. Last week we talked to Luke and Ann Dodd, and for those that haven't watched that or listened to that, you need to go check that out. But Ann said something similar. She said, you learn to appreciate the small things that other people just overlook. Yeah. The time together, the brief phone calls, the letters, those kind of things. And that's something that she looks back fondly on, but realizes that not a lot of people necessarily appreciate those things. Yeah. What are some of the better memories that you have?
Well, I think
hopefully there's at least one good one.
Yeah,
it's going to be a rough conversation if there's not.
No, I kind of, when I look back on it, probably two of my favorite, and one I guess was maybe more meaningful, but was when you came home from a deployment where while you were gone, our son Ethan was born. And he was 2 months old when you came back.
Right.
And so that was kind of a really special moment because you were meeting him for the first time. And
he was already sleeping through the night.
He was already
when I met him
for
the first time.
So that was pretty great.
I recommend it. I recommend it, actually.
So that was a pretty special moment.
Yeah.
Is just you getting to meet him, but then also when you came back from your deployment to Iraq. That was a combat deployment in 2003, and that was pretty special because we didn't really have a lot of communication during that time while you were gone.
Right.
And so I think we maybe had a total of 2 phone calls that were like maybe 1 minute,
a couple minutes each. Yeah, right.
So it wasn't really even, we didn't even have a lot of communication. So I think you coming back from that deployment was, for one, very meaningful because we didn't know how all that was gonna end. With there was times that I didn't even know if you were okay and kind of what was going on because we pretty much had zero communication, and then just knowing that you were home and safe and all of that. So that was So I would say those were the two kind of moments that stand out.
When you think about military life just in general, not deployments or anything, but just being a part of the military community and all of that involves, what are some of the good things about that maybe you miss being apart from that, or you look back on and think that was a really nice thing? I mean, I think about the community that we lived in on base. Mm-hmm. Everyone is kind of dealing with the same thing. Maybe not everyone is in the same unit, but people are deploying at the same time and coming and going, so there's kind of a camaraderie there, and that's something I look fondly back on. What are some things about just military life generally that you would say are good things?
Well, for me, I would think of that like just the community that we had the opportunity to be a part of, not just on base, but the other places where we were, just the military community, because you kind of are always watching out for each other.
Right.
And when you're living with people that are kind of, like you said, going through the same things, and you're kind of watching out for each other, and okay, her husband's deployed, he's just coming home, they're having a baby right now, so they need some help. And so you're kind of become a very tight-knit community, even though maybe you are not all part of the same unit and all of that, and just so that neighborly kind of community, I did really appreciate that. when I mentioned when you were gone when Ethan was born, and so I was very pregnant, having to like take the trash out, pull the trash cans down, and there was a mom down the street, and she had her teenage son come every trash day. She's like, you go help her bring her trash cans down. So he would show up every trash day and took the trash cans down and asked if there's any trash in the house he could take out. It's just things like that, that when you know what someone else is going through in a way like that, that's really personal, that you're able to help them, and there's just a connection there. So that was really, that's a really neat thing.
Yeah. What about you, Jeannette? What are some things about just military life, military community that you enjoyed or you appreciate looking back on?
So I would second a lot of things that Susanne just mentioned. Having those relationships, that bond with people who understand what you're going through, because one, they have either gone through it or they're currently going through it at the moment. It really is just a different type of relationships, a different type of bond with other people, with other families that have that military background, because there is that understanding there, and it is unique. I would say it is a unique bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you are in that environment, kind of in that bubble, what you do as Marines or what the families deal with, and the coming and going and the training and the rest of it. It's not unusual. That's what everyone's doing. And you realize that when you go other places and talk about what's going on. Like, that's the craziest thing in the world. Well, your neighbors don't think it's crazy. It's just part of life. Being in that community is a really special thing, I think. It can be, certainly. We talk about challenges of military families and military life, and raising kids and being married and all those things. We'll just start broadly. We can get more specific, but broadly, what are some challenges that people don't understand? Some things, just in your own experience. And now you guys, you both work with the Mighty Oaks Foundation, so we work with a lot of veterans and service members. Specifically, you both work a lot with our women's program, and so you've continued to have these conversations and understand some of those unique challenges, I think. But what are some of the things that are just unique that other people wouldn't understand or wouldn't know about unless they had lived through it? Anything jump out at you? It's hard when you're in the middle of it because it doesn't seem unique to you.
Yeah. I would say a lot of the transitioning and the worry that's involved. So transitioning and just with him leaving and just being gone, and the stress and anxiety that's there afterwards, and having to deal with that, one transitioning into being a single person with your other half gone, and from a family standpoint, being a single parent and dealing with that, and then having that worry, but still keeping a straight face while dealing with it, because you have kids that are looking up to you, jobs to continue on.
Right.
The world doesn't stop because you're worried about your husband while he's gone at war.
Right.
I feel like that it is maybe walking your kids through some of that and helping them know how to process, why Dad's leaving again, or why he has to be, going over here, why he has to be doing that. And then really just having the conversations maybe before. I just think back to some of the conversations you and I had to have. And I know, military families deal with this all the time, and law enforcement families deal with this all the time, of having the conversations of like, what happens if you don't come home? What does that look like for our family? What does our life look like after that? Is having those kinds of conversations that I'm sure is a unique maybe struggle to military families, because it's kind of something that you're always thinking about.
Right.
So, and I would say the law enforcement families as well need to have those conversations. But that's what I would say maybe is just learning how to walk your kids through some of that.
Yeah.
Then having those difficult conversations.
How do you do that? How do you walk children, particularly small children, through all of that? I mean, not necessarily the what if Dad doesn't come home, but why he has to leave, and how we're going to navigate a lot of what's taking place around us. Because even when someone's not deployed, generally speaking, in the military, you may not be deployed as in another country, but you might be out, training somewhere, or you're home. you're for us, we lived on Camp Pendleton. We shopped on Camp Pendleton. I worked at Camp Pendleton. We trained at Camp Pendleton, but that doesn't mean we're together. I could be gone for 2 weeks on the same base and then come home. So there's a lot of separation. How do you walk your kids through some of those issues, some of those unique stressors maybe for a child?
For us, I feel like it was a lot of just keeping, even though those things were always changing, keeping so many things the same. So, we were part of a church. There's so many things in our life that stayed the same, like our routine,
Right.
where we went and did this thing. We still played with these friends. We still, did this activity. We still saw, our family. There's so many things in our life that continue to stay the same while all this other stuff was changing. And so having some things that stay the same for them so that there is some security somewhere so that they know, okay, I don't know what's happening with, and I'm talking about like really small kids because they don't really have the understanding of you being able to talk them through all of that. As kids get older, that changes and they're able to maybe have a better understanding of what's happening.
Yeah.
But for small kids that thrive on routine and thrive on sameness in their life, it really, I feel like, helped us to have some things that always stayed the same that we did. And then just having conversations that just, this is kind of what's normal for us, and making it positive and like it's going to be okay, and like Jeannette mentioned, like you have to kind of put on a brave face sometimes, for them. So those are some things that really helped, kind of walk kids through some of that when things are changing all the time.
Right.
And you're always transitioning from one thing to the next.
Yeah, it's interesting then, because that's one of the stresses. Jeannette, you mentioned that things don't stop because my spouse is training, or he's gone for the week, or he's gone for a period of months. Things don't change, and that's a real stress because there's worry and concern that goes along with that. But on the other hand, it's being able to maintain consistency during that time, and the routines that keep things moving the way they're supposed to. If things came to a stop when they were gone, that'd be a mess. And so you have to fight that tension all the time. How did you help? And your kids were young as well during that time. How do you help them through that and understand a lot of what's going on?
Well, our family was a bit of a mess back then. So it was, and the kids were young. But I don't think Camille was at an age of understanding things, but I didn't think she truly understood.
Right.
We did try to keep normalcy in the home. During those times that Brandon was away, whether it was training or deployment, we spent a lot of time with family. We had we had family to lean on very heavily.
Yeah.
Friends, not so much, but family definitely. I wish we were in church during that time, because that would have just helped us so much now looking back on everything. But
Right.
It was tough. It was tough because we solely had family to lean on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kids, they tend to kind of conform, I think, to their environment, and so they learn this is what's normal for us, and this is how we do life. They don't understand. Maybe looking back, they do. But for you, trying to grow in a marriage relationship, to maintain a good relationship, that can be a real challenge. And again, you each have your own experience, but you've helped a lot of ladies since then process their own marriage experience during deployments and during training and during military and all those things. What are some of the, separation aside, what are some of the unique challenges to being married to someone who's in the military? Not the deployment part, but just their jobs or whatever. And then how do you continue to grow in your relationship when there is so much separation and there is such a different kind of view of the world and life? And how did you do it, or how do you wish you had done it, or what have you told other people to do, since then, now that you work with people who are trying to figure this out? Either one of you, anytime. Just jump in. It doesn't matter.
Just thinking.
The stresses were very heavy in our relationship, or I would say more on Brandon's side. When we first got in a relationship, we started having children. Him dealing with the day-to-day stresses in the military. I didn't understand what he was going through, not at all. It was, in our relationship, it's, I do this and you do that. And I want to say a lot of the things that we do are a lot of 50-50 kind of things, just so happens to be, where at times it should have been, I should have helped a lot more during the times that he needed it, because I just wasn't aware that he was so stressed out from work, dealing with a lot of personal feelings of depression and many other stressors that affected him from the military, and I didn't help him in that aspect.
Right.
I just, kind of burdened him even more, like, take out the trash, help me, I'm cleaning up all the rest of the house, can you just clean up the bathroom for me, or can you just clean out the refrigerator for me? Whereas I could have just taken all of that and helped him so much more, burdening him with all that extra stress. It could be, something so small, like cleaning out the refrigerator, but that was just a day that was just really hard for him, and him coping with other things, and just put extra stress on our relationship. That turns into an argument and blows up and goes all crazy. Something as small as that.
Yeah. So communication is a real challenge. You didn't come from a military family. You didn't grow up in a military family, right?
No.
So you come into a marriage, and Brandon was already in the Marine Corps, and it's all brand new to you, and you have zero context for what he's dealing with, and because it's a job, he's going off to work and then he's coming home, right? But communicating and learning how to communicate is a real challenge, particularly when there's a lot of separation. What are some of the other maybe difficulties of being married in that environment, and some things that can help navigate that for people?
It's really difficult to feel connected to the other person in a real way when you're kind of constantly going through some of that.
Right.
I look back at the first 8 years of our relationship, it was military while we were dating, and then when we were married. So it was a lot of that, a lot of transitions, a lot of being gone for periods of time, reuniting again. One of the things I wish that we had worked on a little bit more is staying connected during those times, and deciding ahead of time, like, when you were going to be gone, this is where we're going to be when you get back. Like, we're going to do, read this together, or we're going to journal this about this, or we're going to, and so staying connected and making decisions ahead of time, where we're both going to make some goals individually while we're separated, and then for us together as a married couple, so that when we get back together, then we're going to be, in this place. And so that's I wish we had done that, because I think that would have helped so much on the other end. Because really, after those first 5 years, it was almost like we were starting over again, really.
Right.
And so just keeping that connection, I think, is very, very difficult. And that is a challenge for a lot of families, that they spend so much time apart, because then every time you get back together, it's almost like you're starting over again, or you're picking up where you left off instead of having even grown during that time. Or maybe one person decides to do this and grows in this area, and the other person doesn't. And so you're kind of in different places all the time, where when you spend a lot of time together, you're able to kind of grow and talk more, and all of that. And so I think communication definitely, but also connection in that way, where you're both kind of growing together, moving forward in the same way. And I think a lot of that is missing in families, for military families who are separated a lot.
Right.
And so it's just that true connection and that growth together as a couple. And so that's really what I wish we had done more of. Maybe I think that would have helped so much later on for us to be able to do that. And I think that's definitely a challenge.
How do you maintain communication? And Jeannette, you lived through a bunch of deployments. We went through 2 together. You went through 5 or whatever together. How do you maintain that connection? Or again, maybe it's I wish we had done something different to maintain closeness and connection, even though there's physical separation. How do you do that? What does that look like? Because I think it's easy, well, I know it is, for the deployed service member to just kind of compartmentalize, well, this is what I'm doing now. I was actually asked this question yesterday. As a dad and as a husband, how did you deal with being in Iraq, and what was the struggle that went on there? And I've never really been asked that, and I was like, well, I mean, you just kind of, this is what I'm doing now. So this is what I'm doing, and then when I go home, I'll do that. But that creates problems on the other side. How do you maintain connection when there's physical separation? And again, maybe it's, I wish we had done this, or I know people that have done this.
Yeah. Well, I wish we would have done a lot, because it would have prevented so many other problems.
Yeah.
I wish we would have just talked more. I wish we would have planned things before him leaving places, even if it was training for a few days or training for a few weeks. I wish we would have planned.
Planned like what?
You know how they say you should date your spouse?
Yeah.
I wish we would have just dated each other,
yeah.
Because it was just trying to get through days to then deal with the days gone and then appreciate the time afterwards.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's the build up to the leaving.
Yeah.
And you're just struggling through that together.
Yeah.
And then they're
yeah.
gone, which,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people say, my wife has said, sometimes them leaving is a relief because now all that struggle's gone. So they're gone. And then you've got that time of separation, and then they come back. So yeah, dating through that preparation time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we could have. Well, even now, heck, I wish we could date more now.
Right. And it's intentionality, I think, is what
Yeah.
you're both saying, is you have to be very intentional about what you do.
Oh, yeah.
I think the military does a good job of communicating. These are some of the feelings you're going to feel while they're gone. These are some of the issues you're going to have. You need to make sure your will is filled out, and you've got a list of all of the service companies for the car, for the house, for the whatever. Make sure all that's in order and your finances are in order. But how to be intentional about your relationship is something that is often missed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it creates so much struggle on the other side.
And the emotions that come along with some of that, because you talk about all the stress that comes with getting ready for your spouse to leave, and there is the kind of that buildup of, man, I wish they would just leave. And sometimes there's the yanking back and forth. It's going to be this day, and it's going to be this day, and oh, never mind, it's going to be next week, and then it's going to be 2 weeks from now, and oh wait, it's tomorrow. So there's so much back and forth like that you kind of I just want them to leave so I can stop struggling with this, and it's very stressful.
Yeah.
And then that in turn makes you a stressful parent, and all of that affects the whole house.
Yeah.
So I think dealing with the emotions of it is something that would have been nice to know. And it's a thing. Everyone, military families talk about it. The emotions that come along with the workup,
Right.
and then there is that initial kind of relief, okay, now I can start the deployment phase of this thing, because it's all all the phases of
Right.
someone getting ready to leave. And so it is just the emotions of it that I don't think I was not prepared for.
Oh no.
Yeah. Other than, we need to date through this time. That's a great way to say that. We need to be very intentional about our relationship during the build-up and in the process that leads to the deployment. What are some other things maybe that you wish you had done or wish you had known about that time that would have helped?
I wish that maybe I had made a better effort to allow you to connect with the kids a little bit better, when you came home, during the times that you were at home, because it's really easy to compartmentalize, like you said, and so you do your thing, I do my thing. So my thing was the kids in the house, and your thing was whatever you were doing. And so I, took care. Your whatever you were, and I did everything at home. I did everything with the kids, and I just don't think I did a very good job of allowing you to be a part of that process. As the kids got a little bit older, and then as we had, another child, I don't think that I did a really good job of allowing you to participate and just to be a part of their lives when they were little in that way. I just looked at it as my thing, and
Right. Maybe you can both talk about this. Susanne, you've definitely talked about this before. I think you and I have talked about it before, is the roles in marriage and how those roles don't change, or they shouldn't change. The roles shouldn't change simply because a deployment has taken place. The husband is still the husband, the wife is still the wife, the the roles that we fulfill, husband and wife, those shouldn't change during the time of separation, even though functionally how those are played out may change, but the responsibility that goes along with those shouldn't change. And I think that's a big roadblock that people inadvertently throw in front of themselves. Can you guys talk about that a little bit? Because that's a really important conversation, I think.
I've heard women talk about their husbands coming back from deployment, and they talk about, there's a reintegration, and so they talk about that, and I know what people mean when they say that.
And that's real. That's
it's a real
true.
thing, yes. But for families, I've heard women say, when my husband comes home, I have to let him lead the home again. I have to let him take that leadership position again. I have to give that up to him again. And I would always challenge that and say, that should have never changed in the first place.
People will say, I had to be mom and dad while he was gone, and those kind of things, right?
Well, it doesn't matter if your husband is home or gone. He's still the dad, and he's still your husband, and he's still the leader of your home. You don't assume that role just because he's not actually there physically to fill it.
Right.
And so still playing out your role, as helper, and all those things that you're doing to allow him to be able to do what he's doing doesn't change whether he's gone or there. And so that, I feel like, is something that we did do that I can say I'm happy that we did do that, is that we didn't have that crazy shift of, oh wow, now you're in charge again, or you're taking control again, or now you want to be the leader of our home again.
Right.
For us, that didn't change, and I think because we had the viewpoint from the beginning that this is how it was, and this is what I'm doing, this is what you're doing, this is my role, this is your role, and we didn't have that crazy just difficult time.
Right.
In our family coming together again like that, because our roles didn't change. And so that's kind of, I've challenged women with that before. It's just that thought of, it doesn't matter if he's gone, it doesn't mean you become the leader of the home. It doesn't mean you become dad. It looks different, and the things that you're doing maybe are more than you would normally do, or some of the stuff that you take on because he's not there, but you're doing those things to help him.
Right.
Do what he's doing. And so that is a really interesting, has been an interesting thing that has, I want to say, in the last few years, I've heard kind of people talking about this quite a bit, is that's the difficulty they have, when their spouse comes home, when their husband comes home, is, now I have to give up that leadership position to him again. And I would maybe venture to say that that shouldn't have been yours while he was gone.
Yeah.
So.
That's so funny that I wish we would have done that, because I was on that other end, not necessarily looking at myself as a leader, but we had a lot of friction in our relationship with him returning back from wherever he was at. And it was tough because I had to relinquish a lot of those responsibilities to him, things that I was just so used to doing myself. And it just became a part of my daily routine with the kids and within the home, and it created a lot of friction. And I wish we would have done things like that way, because it would have helped us tremendously with the reintegration process of him coming home.
Yeah, it's functionally it will be different. Whoever's left behind, whether it's the husband or the wife, they're going to have to do more than they would otherwise. But that doesn't change the role in the home. I think, conversely, more and more women are deploying and leaving the husband at home with the kids. And whatever that period of time looks like, he may fulfill many of the roles that the mom might fulfill for those kids, and meeting some of those needs. But he doesn't become the mom, and he needs to speak to the kids about mom and talk about who she is and what she does, so that when she comes home, she can fall back into that role. And again, it's just about being intentional.
Yeah.
It's funny how language sets us up for failure sometimes. I think we say those things and we start to believe them, that things have changed. What are some of the resources that, again, looking back, you wish you had had? Jeannette, you talked about church. You wish you had been in church, and maybe explain why you think that would have been helpful or important to you then. But what are some of the other resources that you would encourage families who are in the middle of military life to reach out to and really put their arms around? And again, the military, I think, is doing a better job all of the time of trying to push resources towards the families. So a big part of it is being responsible and taking advantage of those resources. But what are some things that you wish you had, or you did, and you're thankful you did, that you would tell other families you need to utilize this resource?
So I wish we had a church that we went to. At the time I didn't have a relationship with God, and we didn't have that foundation in our relationship, and it hurt us a lot. There were a lot of struggles there, and I wish I had like-minded people in that environment, because the like-minded people I had during that time, because that's where my mind was at, was just a bit more just out there, more partying and just hanging out, and I guess kind of being irresponsible. But I wish we would have had a foundation, a godly foundation. I wish we would have had a church to go to and had a good foundation and good like-minded people like that around us.
Right.
And I feel like, one, our relationship, our marriage would have benefited from it. Our home, our parenting would have benefited from it. I feel like now we're playing kind of catch up.
Sure. Yeah.
But I wish we would have had that. But I'm so thankful for the friendships I did have, the military family friendships that we did have, because it helped us get through a lot.
Right.
But I wish we would have had that, especially because I feel like the problems that we go through now in our life, and the people that we have now in our life, and the foundation that we have now in our life, it's just life-saving. It gives me such a joyful feeling. I just feel so emotional, right? I feel emotional right now because because of the foundation that we have,
right.
the place that God has in our life, having God in our life and having God as our foundation, who we're going to for our problems,
right.
and the great friendships that we do have, that we seek counsel from. It's a life-changing experience, and I wish we would have had it then, because of the many struggles that we had then.
Right. I think being a parent is extremely difficult in the best of circumstances. Being a spouse is very difficult. Being a good spouse is very difficult in the best of circumstances. And then you throw separations and the stresses related to military service and all those things on top of it. It becomes exponentially more difficult. And if you don't have that foundation, as you said, of truth and even instruction and encouragement, and people who are encouraging you to do the right thing, not encouraging you to do the wrong thing, man, you're just handicapping yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What a benefit that can be. Were there any other resources that you took advantage of and you're thankful that you did, that just helps you, maybe not even through deployment, but just through your life in the military?
Let's see.
There doesn't have to be.
My main resource back then was leaning on my family a lot.
Yeah.
My family helped me so much, emotionally, and with the kids, and with my sanity, because the kids were so little.
Right.
That was the biggest resource to me.
Yeah. That's great. Susanne, what are some of the resources that you took advantage of, or again that you would tell other people, I know you're struggling, you need to do this?
Mm-hmm. I really wish that I had taken more advantage of connecting with probably the other wives of the guys that you were serving with at the time,
right.
and made more of an effort to be involved kind of there. There's a lot of groups to be a part of, a lot of support systems to be a part of for the other ladies that were the spouses that were staying back. So I wish I had gotten more involved with the families and the wives of the men that you were serving with at that time. So that is something that I wish I would have done, and I would encourage other people to do that. I feel like it would have helped me to understand a little bit more of what you were doing.
Right.
I wish I had made more of an effort with that. It's just kind of understanding a little bit more of that, what you guys were doing and what you were a part of, and connecting more with the other wives in that way. We talked about our neighborhood, and I was very connected there, but I wish I would have made more of an effort with that. There was little groups and opportunities to connect, and I wish I would have taken more advantage of that. I am very thankful for our church family at that time. We did have a lot of military families there, and that was a great support system, and I'm really, really thankful for that. So I would encourage people to look for that as well if you don't have that. But that's something I wish I would have done, is just become more connected in that way with the other wives.
Yeah, that's good. You both work here at Mighty Oaks, and specifically in the women's program, and deal with the plethora of issues that ladies struggle with, and many of them. So in our women's program, we'll have spouses, we'll have veterans, we'll have active duty service members, first responders. So it's quite a wide range of folks with different experiences. And I think you both said this to me, certainly Susanne, we've talked about this, that a lot of ladies who are spouses will come to the women's program, and they'll come kind of with a notebook and a pencil in their hand, trying to get all the tips they need to deal with their husband who's struggling with stuff. But the approach of the women's program is not to give you the tools you need to deal with your hurting husband, but rather to understand who you're supposed to be. Can you guys talk about that for a little bit? I think that's a very important distinction, and one that can, even someone who would not attend our program necessarily, it's a distinction they need to make in their own minds if they're struggling, with a spouse who's also struggling.
That's really one of the first things we tell the ladies, when they come, when we are starting our program session, is that they're there for them, not for their husbands, not to learn about their husbands, not to learn about post-traumatic stress per se, not to, they're not there for anyone but themselves, and for them to discover who it is that they were created to be. And that is kind of an interesting light bulb moment, I would say light bulb moment for a lot of ladies, because they don't expect that. And maybe because there's so many resources about Mighty Oaks out there, so many videos that we've done, and we talk about this all the time. Right. And so they might have heard it before, but they don't really understand what it means until they're actually faced with it, and we're actually saying it to them when they're sitting there in that room. And it's kind of like a revelation to them, like, oh wow, like I didn't really come here for that. I came here for me, and I came here to learn who I'm supposed to be. And it really is a turning point for a lot of women, because we say that to them at the beginning, and then they're able to take everything in through that filter, right, and look at everything through that lens, and just understand that it's all about you, and it's all about you being the person that you're supposed to be. And when you figure that out, and once you learn how to do that and learn how to process all these life issues through that, then you're able to better be the person that you're supposed to be for your spouse. And maybe you can, help them and be the encouragement to them that you're supposed to be. And so that is kind of the foundation, I guess, that we kind of set before we start all of our classes or anything in our program.
Jeannette, why is that perspective so important? I think it's easy for military spouses to take on the identity of military spouse. In the first responder community, I know it's exactly the same. It's easy to become the police officer's wife or the firefighter's wife, because so much of your life is wrapped up in that job. It's a very immersive job. All of those are. Why is it so significant for a person to realize, I need to focus on being who I'm supposed to be, instead of focusing on the job or the role that my husband or wife has?
I guess I would just want to mention, or bring up when Brandon had gone through the program and he aligned himself with the man that God wanted him to be. I thought he'd come home and be fixed and everything's going to be all grand. Right. And things, weren't. It was actually quite the opposite. Things actually got worse for our relationship. And I didn't realize. Why did they get worse? Well, I didn't realize that I had my faults, that I wasn't living the life that God created me to live. I had these expectations of him, what he needed to do. He needed to fix himself, and then that's going to make everything better for us. But I didn't look at myself and what I needed to do, and the faults that I had, and the changes that I needed to make. I didn't have a relationship with God during that time, so that just made us so unequally yoked, and things just got so bad. But I mean, I would encourage any spouse whose husband or wife has gone through and attended a Mighty Oaks program. I would encourage them to come and see what it's all about, and see things from a perspective, like Susanne said, of why we were created, why we as women were created in God's eyes, and have how we have our faults, and we cannot just blame the other person in the relationship because they had some issues, had some things traumatic things that happened to them. We also have our faults in that too.
It's remarkable to me how many spouses will look, and generally it's the wife saying, my husband needs to get fixed. And so they're really happy for them to go to a program until changes happen and that person comes back, and it often gets worse before it gets better. And I think it's because of what you just said. It exposes the fact that there are two of us in this relationship, and maybe we both have issues that we need to work on. And maybe his issues are bigger than mine or more traumatic than mine or whatever, but my attitudes, my perspectives, my identity, those are now being exposed as something I need to work on. And that puts us in a whole different situation.
It's really interesting to talk to ladies whose husbands have been to the program, but they don't want to come to the women's program.
Right.
And so a lot of times, I'll encourage them, like, oh, hey, like, maybe since he's come and you're kind of starting to see some of these changes, it would be an encouragement to him if you went, and then you guys can encourage each other, in this way. And it's always kind of like, no, like, that's kind of for him, and I'm glad he did that, but I don't need that. I'm just happy that he's, doing this.
Sure.
And so that's always an interesting conversation, because it's true. It exposes so much of them. They're kind of moving forward in this way, and then you're stuck back here, like, what in the world? Like, shoot, like, I have problems too. So, and we don't like to feel like that. So,
yeah. And none of that is to discourage someone from coming. It's just to say that we all struggle with things, and there is help available, and we just need to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
And stop blaming whatever it is that we're struggling with on the person that we're married to. They have their problems, but I can't be responsible for what they do or don't do, or how they respond or don't respond. I can only be responsible for myself.
Yeah.
And there's real healing that comes from that.
Yeah.
When a husband and wife do go to the program separately, what does that do for their relationship? And, Jeannette, maybe you could talk about this. And Susanne and I have been involved in this for a long time. It's helped our relationship being a part of the organization and being a part of what we do. But Jeannette, when you finally went to a women's program, and you guys came together to a marriage event that we did, how does each of you receiving maybe the direction or the perspective that you need help you together? So it's very individual. You each need to be the person God created you to be, but there is a fruit to your relationship that comes from that. You're both able to move forward together. That was a terrible way to ask that question, but I hope you know what I mean. How does each of you beginning to move into what God created you to be help you collectively or together as a couple?
Well, we can communicate so much better. The expectations in one another aren't there because, we're human. We're going to fail each other. Our expectation is in God, not each other.
Right.
And that helped us out so much because there was so much letdown. After letdown, after letdown. I needed you to do this, and I wanted you to be this person. And now we don't have those expectations towards one another. And if we do, we turn really quickly, and remember, we need to align ourselves this way. We need to align ourselves and look towards God.
Yeah.
and seek counsel from people who can help us through these things. Whereas, back then we're just lashing out on each other
Right.
and wouldn't talk to each other for a week and, threatening each other with divorce or something like that. Where it's not like that at all. I aligned myself with how God wanted me to live, and Brandon did the same thing. And now we're just, happy ever after.
Right, sure.
Not.
Well, there's still struggles. None of this is
Right.
to say, you're perfect on the other side of it, but if your expectation is in God and not another human being,
Yeah.
that changes every conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. There are a lot of other things we could talk about. Are there any other challenges or thoughts, things that you wish you had known that you'd like to communicate to someone else who might be listening? Because I know a lot of people who would listen to a show like this, and we've been told this, a young spouse who's new to military life, they're just trying to figure this thing out, and they don't know where to go or what to do. And then people who are in the middle of struggling with a deployment or something like that. Is there any advice that you would give, or any kind of like, this is what you need to hang on to, this is what you need to know? It's going to be okay, but you need to do this.
I wish I had been less selfish. And so that's something that I would say is think about life not just as it has to do with you and maybe the things that you're dealing with, but like your spouse is probably also dealing with some things. And I wish I had done that. And so that's, I think, what I would encourage someone else is look at life through the lens of other people as well. And, I wish that we had Mighty Oaks back then for us too,
Right.
because I feel like it did bring so much to our relationship and helped us so much. And really truly looking at yourself, am I being the person that I'm supposed to be in every way? And that goes along with that. I think that would have helped me to have a better perspective, to be the person that I'm supposed to be for you during that time in our life. And that's kind of what I would encourage people is to get that help. It's available, and we have so many resources available to help. And if that is something that you need, I would say to get the help, to actually ask for help,
Right.
to do that, because it can help you so much more than you ever thought it would, and it can make the difference for the rest of your relationship with that person.
Yeah, that's good. Jeannette, any closing words?
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. And that was one thing that I really struggled with in our relationship. Through a lot of the problems that we experienced, I just kind of bottled everything in. Talk about it here, vent about it there, but never actually sought help. And I would encourage, military families, first responder families, don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's so many people there
Right.
who want to help.
Yeah.
The church, Mighty Oaks, biblical counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Man, what a great conversation. For those of you that are watching or listening, thank you for doing that. Please do take advantage of the help. And there are a lot of places that you can go for help, as was just mentioned, but the Mighty Oaks Foundation is one of those. Go to our website, mightyoaksprograms.org. If you are a veteran, an active duty service member, a first responder, or the spouse of one of those, we would invite you to attend one of our programs. You can find an application link on our website. Go ahead and fill that out. Someone from our team will get back to you, and we'll get you set up. Maybe, for whatever reason you can't attend a program, please reach out to us. Let us know if you're struggling in a different area. We often connect folks who are dealing with different things with counselors, with help in their area, and we would love to help you with that as well. And again, you can find all that information on our website. If you are not on YouTube, go over to YouTube, check out the other videos that we have there. This will be there, of course, and hundreds of other videos, again, designed to help you. We have testimonies, we have conversations similar to this one and others that are all there for you. Please take some time and check that out. Would love to help you any way that we can. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.